Just keep in mind the recent shooting in Newport News, that impact on our school divisions. And so again, we don't take it for granted that you're here and are able to be with us today. Again, thank you and Happy New Year. And we are going live. And Nancy, take it away. Do you have a mic? I do not.
Good morning and welcome to our January 9th ABTEL meeting. I want to wish everybody a happy new year. Our first meeting of 2023. I hope that everybody had a safe holiday. We will begin by going around and introducing ourselves and just maybe name how you are affiliated with ABTEL, and some of the reminders, like as we make motions to approve different things, we need to make sure that you say your name as you say that so that we can record that. So like I said, I'm Nancy Bradley. I'm at Virginia Tech as the Associate Director of the Office of Academic Programs, and I serve as a member at large.
Janine Connolly, I'm from King George County Schools, 4th grade teacher, and Region 3.
Sherry Hatton, Wozniak, Middle School Band Director in Isle of Wight County Schools.
Peggy Schimler, Randolph College, Director of Education Department, Higher Ed Rep.
Travis Burns, Principal, Northumberland High School, and also President of the Virginia Association of Secondary School Principals.
Dr. Bradley Gray, 3rd grade teacher, Suffolk, Virginia.
Hi, Carrie Swore, representing business and live in Glen Allen.
Andrew Dare, Dean, VCU School of Education, Public Higher Ed.
I'm Eric Moffa, Assistant Professor of Education at Washington and Lee University, and represent private higher ed.
Jessica Jones, Agricultural Education Teacher and FFA Advisor, Pennsylvania County Career and Technical Education, Region 6.
Good morning, Steve Whitten. I teach 6th grade at Mecklenburg County Middle School, and I'm representing the middle school teachers for Region 8.
Good morning, Andy Cox, Director of Teacher Ed at the University of Virginia's College at Wise, and I represent public higher ed.
Jerry DeLuca with Evaluation Systems Group of Pearson. Pleasure to be here with you today.
Hello, good morning. My name is Kelly Crawford, and I'm also with the Evaluation Systems Group of Pearson.
Hi, good morning. I'm Shelby Elliott, Human Resources Administrator for Certification and Compliance, Region 4 with Prince William County Public Schools.
I'm Angela Schneider. I'm with the Office of Professional Practices at DOE.
Skylar Van Valkenburg. I'm a teacher in Henrico County, but I'm here as the rep for the House of Delegates.
Good morning, John L. Torber, Director of Teacher Education and for the Virginia Department of Education.
Good morning, Maggie Clemens, Director of Licensure and School Leadership at the department.
I'm Jim Chapman. I am the Regulatory and Legal Coordinator for the department.
Hey, welcome everybody. Awkward with this stand. Our first, I believe everybody has introduced themselves, including any representatives of guests. Our next order of business is to approve the agenda. As a part of your packet that was sent out via email, there was an agenda. We need an motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved, Peggy Schimler.
Second, Jessica Jones.
Okay, and then second, we have approval of the minutes from our November 14th meeting. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Not hearing any corrections, we need a motion to approve the minutes of the November 14th, 2022 meeting.
Madam Chair, I move to accept the minutes as presented. Jessica Jones.
Second, Janine Connolly.
All right. And thank you. I appreciate that. We will now move on to kind of a happy and sad situation. We are going to honor one of our members today, Dr. Andrew Dare, who will be stepping down. ABTEL, this is his last meeting. We are going to be very sorry to see him go. Andrew started on ABTEL in 2015, filling the spot of, did you fill the spot of Phil Wishong? Is that right when he, or did you just took after he?
I think I filled the spot for Diane Simon.
Oh, Diane Simons. Okay, Diane Simons. But Andrew has been a very active member of our board and of our higher ed community in terms of serving on leadership for different boards and opportunities. And we are really going to miss him. He's leaving ABTEL and he's leaving Virginia. He's leaving the Virginia Commonwealth University for an opportunity at the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And we wish to congratulate him on his new position and to thank him for his service on ABTEL and his service in the state of Virginia. So.
Wow.
I always try to be scripted, but I've actually been on ABTEL, I think it was 2016. So as long as I've been at VCU, I've been on ABTEL. This is an incredible organization. It's the work that we do here is very, very important. And I think it's even more important now. So, just keep doing the excellent, outstanding work that we're doing. And I think we all do a good job with this, but we just have to keep in mind the end result, which are the children. So thank you so much.
Okay, we will now move on to a legislative member update. Delegate Honorable Skylar Van Valkenburg.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Skylar Van Valkenburg, and I represent parts of Western Henrico and the Virginia House of Delegates, and I teach government in Henrico County Public Schools. And they asked me to just kind of give a little update and mix it with kind of how that work mixes with what we do here. And so I thought I'd say a couple things, but I thought I'd start with kind of the broader context of the last couple years. When I first ran in 2017, and one of the big reasons I ran was that we had spent a decade kind of neglecting public education as a legislature, right, as a state, coming out of the recession. And we had seen classroom sizes get bigger, caseloads get bigger, state funding get cut. And that was one of the main drivers for why I got in. And I think one of the things that's been really quite a joy as a member of the House of Delegates is that we've started to turn that ship around. It is public education is kind of like the Titanic, right? It's this massive thing that you have to move. But I think we did that, and we were getting more counselors in schools. We were getting more money in the budget. We were focusing on, teacher pay, some of these things that we all know were necessary for the health of our public schools. But the thing that's kind of left in my mind, the thing which I think is more important is kind of some of these structural things, right? How we fund schools, looking at the composite index and the SOQs, what the teaching profession looks like as we kind of move forward, and how we pay teachers, but also how we professionalize the education and how we incentivize it, how we test students. Right. Some of these kind of big structural things that are challenging. And of course, tied to that is stuff we do here too, with teacher training, teacher accreditation. And so that's kind of where I think we need to be, right? We need to continue the push because we're not where we need to be in terms of funding and some of these other things, but we need to be starting to look at some of these structural things. And I don't need to tell anybody in here, of course, that at the moment we need to do that is also a moment of kind of culture wars reasserting themselves in the educational field, kind of across the board. And that's, of course, really negatively impacted the teaching profession, right? I mean, I think we know teachers are leaving for a variety of reasons or not entering the profession for a variety of reasons. Some of it's pay, some of it's COVID, but some of it's that kind of stuff. And so I guess I'll real briefly hit session where I hope it goes where I fear it will go, and then kind of end with the work here. But there's a lot of potentially good work we can do this session, both in the budget and in policy. In the budget, I'm hopeful that we can continue the work of giving teacher pay raises, because we have got to do that if we want to get people in this field and if we want to keep people. I think it was a missed opportunity that the governor did not put it in his proposed budget, but I hope the legislature can right that wrong. I'm hopeful that we can continue the work of investing in schools. I'm hopeful we continue doing the nuts and bolts stuff that we know are important for our kids. Last year, for example, I had a bill on trying to reform how we test students, got turned into a work group. I'm hopeful maybe we can get that work group kickstarted. I have a bill for teacher trainings to try to make them less frequent this year, just to try to give time back to teachers. Carrie Coyner has a bill to kind of expand on her work on literacy, that will keep the momentum going there. So I'm hopeful that we can continue to do the things that we know will make education in this Commonwealth better, right? That will help our kids, to the professor's point. I fear we are going to spend 2 months in a culture war food fight where we're not going to get much done. And that is a real fear for me, because I think we have spent 5 or 6 years really making progress, and in a lot of it in a bipartisan way, actually, a lot of it getting votes from both sides, whether on the budget side or the policy side. And it's too early to tell, right? It's too early to tell whether the better angels of our nature will win out, or if maybe election season politics will win out. So kind of pay attention under the news and see if we are able to get some of this stuff, if we can continue to make progress on some of these things, whether on the budget or policy side, or if we just end up having a lot of fights about school curriculum and books and things like that. But I guess I'll conclude with, that's what makes the work that we're doing in these types of groups just so important. I'll end with that. Everybody knows that teaching, not just in Virginia, right, but of course across the country, right, we're in this moment where we really need to kind of double down on ensuring that we are investing in and valuing teaching. And obviously this group is a huge part of that, right? And I firmly believe that we need to, we don't just need to give teachers pay raises, although we need to do that. We need to revolutionize the teaching profession. We need to do things like teacher career ladders, right? We need to do things like look at teacher training and accreditation and reform them holistically, rather than what the legislature typically does and comes in and just hangs things on like a Christmas tree, then gives them to you guys. We need to be looking at the things like that, because we need to get people in the profession, but we need to keep people who are in the profession. And I really believe that the way you keep people in the profession is you treat them like professionals, right? You incentivize them to do good work. And you create a teaching community that is respected, that you can see yourself improving, you can see yourself moving forward. And so, all the groups like this that do work in that space are important. And I would really encourage you to think about ways in which we as a legislature can make change in a positive sense, to work towards that mission, because otherwise we're in a vacuum. If we're not trying to make those positive changes, we're in a vacuum where attacks become the dominant narrative. And so thank you for all the work you do. I'm an optimist, so I'm a glass half full guy. I think we're going to continue to do good things. But I really want, as long as I'm in the legislature, especially now that we've kind of gotten the ball rolling, I would really love to look and see at how we can really think big about the teaching profession in Virginia and be a leader across the country. So thank you.
Do we want to take any questions or anything? Dr. Johnson, is that all right if we ask questions? Yeah. Yeah. I want to thank you on behalf of, I cannot imagine being a student in your classroom and knowing that you're a teacher, that you're serving as a delegate. I mean, just a fabulous representation for really, I mean, in teacher education, we know this battle. And so it's wonderful to have you in that position. And but one of the questions I have, and I'll open it up to others as well, is we always want to know how can we make the biggest impact? Do we reach out to our local governmental relations? What are the ways that we can, because I mean, we're right there with you. So what can we do to kind of help that move that forward?
That is a great question. And I guess that my answer is it depends, right? I really think like if you're thinking about how can you, if you're thinking about policy, so for example, the work of this group, how can you be effective? It's to go to the legislators that do this work, right? And that's not all 140 folks, right? There's a group of people in the legislature who really are on the kind of front foot on this issue, whether it's Democrat or Republican. I think it's going to them with, hey, we have these concrete changes that we think are very important, or hey, this is how we think we can improve it, because then they'll get the ball rolling. You're talking about the broader kind of societal Virginia things. I always tell teachers and people in education, I think the most important thing to do is to be an advocate yourself. And that's, and what I mean by that is to be public about what it means to be an educator, about what you need, whether that's a letter to the editor, an op-ed, showing up at your legislator's office, just being in the community, right? Being at local events in the community. I think that's when teachers are present and when teachers are around, people respect teachers. They want to hear from teachers, right? They are allies of teachers. And so I always think, it's a very vague answer, of course, but like, I just think the more teachers are outside of their classroom, off hours, and in the community, I think that's always the most effective way.
I think that's an important piece though, because teachers are not ones to sell themselves. Like we're not the ones out there going, look at me, look what I'm doing. And I think we need to do more of that and be honest with that. Other questions for Delegate Van Valkenburg?
As an advisory board, we're always trying to stay a little bit ahead of the curve. Do you have any specific legislation that we should be kind of talking about or looking at, or anything just to prepare us?
It's hard to the short answer is not sure. It's kind of hard to see what's going to kind of make it through this year. And even what's going to be filed, because a lot of bills haven't been filed yet. I think Carrie Coyner's literacy bill continues to be something, and I think I'm not 100% sure what the scope of her bill is yet, but I think that is going to continue to be a through line. Last year with my bill with the teacher work group for assessments, it hasn't gotten off the ground yet, but it should hopefully sometime this year, and I think that's an incredibly important field that we need to get right. And so having people engaged in that once it gets started, I think is going to be very important, because we're supposed to propose a series of policies come November for the following session. And, we often swing and miss when we do assessments in this country. It's just like the swings are just, too much testing, not enough testing, the bad kind of testing, So I would encourage y'all to stay on top of that, because whether that work group goes anywhere or not, it is an issue that we need to fix in Virginia, and it is something that we need to work on. I've got a teacher training bill this year to try to not to roll back the training, but to roll back the frequency of trainings. So for example, anytime you give an SOL test, you have to take an hour-long training, and to give a test 3 times a year, that's 3 hours. I mean, it seems absurd to me. We can sign away our lives, right? And I could like literally say the video back to you at this point after 18 years. I could still see the scenes in the video. And that's kind of, and then there's a little component to it where the localities have to kind of give a report back about what they're doing, because some of it is we just don't know how the localities are interpreting the code and then putting trainings on. And that's my kind of like small attempt to start a bigger conversation around training and accreditation for how can we keep them, because clearly we need to, we don't need to get rid of accreditation and just let anybody become a teacher. I don't think that's good. That's not good for our kids, right? But how can we think a little bit broader about taking these disparate components and streamlining them so that they're effective, but we're not overwhelming teachers or teachers to be, or people who want to become teachers midway through their career. So I think some of those things you're not going to see it in the news, right? So I think, but those are things worth looking out for, and hopefully we can get a little bit of momentum around.
Any other questions?
And I'm also, I mean, I would love for us to just sidebar, continue to have the conversation and make progress around support staff and counselors in schools. We got a lot of momentum around that a couple of years ago, and it seems to have dried up. And I would like that to continue because more than ever, we need those folks.
Other questions? Well, thank you again for your presentation and for sharing this with us. It's always wonderful when we can partner with somebody who's got the same passion we do. So we're so glad to have you come and share that with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, next we move on to agenda items. We have 3 agenda items for today. Our first is review of proposed amendments to the procedure for dismissals to comport with legislation from 2020 General Assembly, and we're going to welcome Mr. Jim Chapman.
All this for a very short presentation. Well, I will start off by saying, thank you very much for having me here. My name is Jim Chapman. I'm the regulatory and legal coordinator for the Virginia Department of Education. And so, although I haven't been here very many times, I'm very familiar with the work that you all do. And just as a more personal note, thank you all for the time that you volunteer here. I know that it's a lot of your time, it's a lot of your expertise that you're giving back to the company. But as the parent of 4 children in Virginia public schools, I have to say that it's very meaningful to folks like myself. Thank you very much. This should be a very short presentation. What we're doing here today is we're looking to update the grievance procedures that are in the board's regulations. And so that comes before this body as the result of statutory changes that happened during the 2020 and the 2021 General Assembly sessions. We're a little bit behind on this action. So we're presenting this as a fast track. Normally, this is the time of cleanup that we would do with an exempt action. It could be done very, very quickly. The criteria under statute for a fast track action is that it be non-controversial. In this case, we think that this meets that definition because we're not really exercising discretion. This is all happening as the result of statutory changes. And so we have a little chart here of the bills that made these changes. What we're looking to do is amend a couple of the definitions, including the definition of grievance and the definition of military status as the result of the 2020 House Bill 1049, 2021 House Bill 2161, and Senate Bill 1410 from the 2021 session. And then the larger change is the result of Senate Bill 377 from 2020, which you may recall, this has been sort of a back and forth in the legislature between allowing for a school board when they're going through this grievance procedure to assign a three-person panel, a 3-member fact-finding panel, in order to do this grievance hearing, before the school board. So we're making these changes to conform. There's a couple of other changes that we've done in the process. So if you notice on the action item, there's a lot of extra text. And really what's happening there is that under statute, we are required to enact the procedure from this statutory process. So it has to be in the regulations. And so we just took the opportunity to go ahead and make sure it aligns very closely with what the statutory text says. We don't believe that we're exercising any discretion. The statute says do this procedure. And so here we are doing this procedure exactly as it is in the statute and making the regulatory language say the same thing. My understanding is that this action came before this body sometime over the summer. And there was at least one question, which I think is a really good question, about whether or not the regulation should include a specific timeline requiring a school board to hold this 3-person fact-finding conference or for this hearing within a certain amount of time. I think that's a really good question. It's one that perhaps ABTEL will consider, but I will offer this in the time for the moment. I think a good rule of thumb is that when the General Assembly has spoken with a process, we really need to stick very closely to that process. And so, at least here, what we're asking for you to do, regardless of that question, is to go ahead and put forth these changes because we're doing exactly what the legislature told us to do. And so at the very least, we need to make sure those changes get enacted in the regulations. If you would like to consider further changes, this body is certainly free to do so. But we would just ask that it would be done in a separate action, because at that point, we would be exercising a pretty good deal of discretion. My guess is that there's some school boards that might have some things to say or would like to weigh an opinion. There may be teachers associations who would also like to weigh an opinion on that. And there's certainly, as part of our regulatory process, we want those opinions. We want them to have an opportunity to voice concerns, to give feedback and how this might affect their practice. But as far as this action goes, we're trying to do what the legislature told us to do and move this forward. Yeah. I'd be glad to take any questions.
I actually serve on a local school board. I serve in the city of Salem, and I believe that we get guidance from VSBA on timeline. Like, we have things that we accept that probably partner with this, that give the teachers the guideline on when. That's probably because I'm pretty sure there is a timeline that we follow for that. But any other questions or comments regarding this presentation?
So if I remember correctly from our last time, is that the worry was that the grievance procedure could carry on for months and months. Where are we with that then?
Well, again, that may be a concern. The statute doesn't speak to a timeline. But again, this is what we're trying to do in this action is just clean up to make sure that we allow for the 3-member panel, just as the statute requires us to do. Right now, the issue is that the regulations they don't conform with the statute. And so there's a conflict that we're creating. The statute allows for this process that the regulations don't allow for. And so we just want to make sure that those coincide. As I mentioned, if that's a concern for ABTEL, then it's likely that should be dealt with through a separate action.
So it's currently in there at 15 days. So that was something that shouldn't be in there.
It came out with the legislative changes. Okay. Yeah. So we're taking them out because what we're supposed to do, again, the way that the statute speaks is that our process is supposed to match what's in the statute. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes.
So with the, is there finality with the 3-member panel or school board decision?
Is there finality with the 3-member panel? Because I think at one time it could even go to your local courts at some point, but it seems like that's no longer in the language.
My understanding of this process is that the 3-member panel is going to be making a recommendation to the school board. So the school board hasn't lost authority to make the decision. Yeah. Appeals to a court beyond that are, of course, part of the litigation that might occur, but yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So I do have, it's a 2-pronged question. Back to the 3-member fact-finding panel, the definition of who can decide that still rests with the school board.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second part to that recommendation for an actual timeline. So even if that information is scrubbed out, there is no consistency as to what that timeline looks like from school board to school board. Would the advisory council here be able to set something as a recommendation within that discretion that you described?
Yeah. So again, if you would like to, set that sort of timeline, the recommendation would be that it come in a separate action so we can go through the full regulatory process. At that point, this would no longer be, we don't think appropriate for a fast track item just because of the level of discretion that that we would be asking the Board of Education to exercise in the process. And so we would need to involve more stakeholders. Now, beyond that, there may be some reasons why you don't want to, the legislature pulled that out. I think there might be some wisdom to that. As you recall from reading these statutes, there are timelines with respect to requesting evidence, from both parties. It sets 10-day timelines. And so a 15-day window, given the fact that there are these evidentiary requirements that, evidence full record files be provided within a 10-day window, that 15 days might become too tight. And so it might eat into the opportunity for folks to make requests. So there may be some other things to go about. And that's not as a way of saying, don't do it. It's more of a reason of emphasizing that, again, for that would be appropriate for a different action when ABTEL is looking more holistically at everything about this process that might be affected. Sure. Yeah, it's long. Yeah, no, the fast track, we're looking at getting a change in the regulatory process. Again, as soon as it goes through executive review, hopefully that's all buttoned up within 90 days or so once it's approved by the board. The full regulatory process, in addition to this body, starting to open up discussions, start to involve stakeholders to come up with a proposal. Then it would have to go to the Board of Education. We would have to open up what's called a NORA, a Notice of Intended Regulatory Action, basically letting the Commonwealth know that we are considering action on this particular area. And then it comes after that, it gets posted on Town Hall. It comes back to the board for proposed stage, goes back to Town Hall for public comment, comes back to the board for a final stage, and then goes back out for public comment. That process can take between 1.5 years and 2 years to make those changes. So in terms of getting the regulations aligned with the statute, the fast track we can make happen quickly, but any changes beyond what the statute is asking, we think would be appropriate for the full regulatory process, which is much slower by design. We want to make sure that the changes that we're exercising discretion on are happening very considered, with a lot of input from the public. This one, again, the legislature has spoken. They've told us what the process must be. So as far as these changes go, we don't need to re-involve the public because the legislature has already involved the public through the legislative process. And we're at this point just doing what the legislature requires.
And this is my last question.
Yeah.
Is there a component of discovery? I kind of look through to see where the school board has some evidence and then the teacher has some evidence. Is there a time of discovery where each, the board and then the teacher and their teacher representative would have time to review those pieces of evidence before the hearing, or is everything just come out at the hearing?
Well, they would have time, before, but again, the statute speaks to, once a request for a file has been made, it must be provided within a 10-day period. So yeah, presumably, that would be worked out in setting the hearing date. Is sufficient time to review that information.
So 10 days. Any material would have to be.
Once the request for it has been made, yeah, it must be provided within the time frame that the statute requires, which I believe is 10 days.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm assuming we need to have a motion to approve the amendments to the procedure for dismissals as presented. Do we have a motion? Yes. Absolutely.
School board does make a decision, then stand for months and months and months before hearing. There's no timeline on this. I think this kind of holds both groups accountable, that if something like this would reach to the level of a dismissal, that it should be fairly quick and a timeline set.
I mean, my question is, having served on a school board, once something like this comes to a school board, it's not something that you want to drag. I mean, I don't know why a school board, what would be the motivation to drag out a situation like that? Typically, if you have some sort of issue, I would think it'd actually be more on the side of the teacher that would want that procedure to last longer than on the school board. That's just my my take on that process.
Right, but I think unless we have some kind of limits, then your school board can certainly say, we want to take action for our new policy, 5 to 10 days. But that may be your policy where we could say is that we're making all these kind of decisions, and then, you know what, it's April, so we may not come back around to look at this until December. And that's a long time to hold a lot of things in people.
I guess I would say, I think we hear the concern, but I guess I would distinguish the concern from the current legislation. So the concern, I think we hear, and he is giving us a path to address the concern. But at this time, the legislation is already ruled, and we are really trying to conform, address the minor changes that our state policies have. So not to take away from your concern, but at this point, the legislation has already removed this. Is that not correct?
That's correct. Yeah, this is good law. It's just that our regulations don't match the law.
Our
Yeah.
well, the Department of Education.
Yeah, that's right.
So if we wanted to approach this, we would have to then approach somebody who would be willing to put forward to begin this process.
That separate motion.
Right.
Yeah, what we would ask for is that you approve this so that we can go ahead and conform the regulations to what the law requires. And then in a separate motion, ask to convene a panel within ABTEL or a committee to start looking at the issue, fresh.
Yeah, and I understand this is gone, it's already legislation, but I think for us as recommending board that we see that this could be a practice that may vary from one school district to another in potentially not a good way. And so as the board goes, I have a hard time saying that, yeah, I agree with this legislation because it has an side to it that could throw a lot of people's lives into havoc. So I understand it's a done deal.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Well, Joan, should we have a motion with this motion to convene a group to take a deeper look at it, or? Okay.
Just maybe a question or maybe a point. Is the advisory board our teacher education and licensure? Why are we getting into the weeds of dismissal?
Yeah, so the advisory board is supposed to consider this type of issue under statute. And so normally for a fast track item of this type or for an exempt action of this type, I would just bring it to the Board of Education myself. But the process that this body is the statutory body appointed to advise the board. So, it has to come here before it goes to the Board of Education.
And you typically don't hear a lot of items, but remember, our office has oversight of professional practice, teacher education, as well as the K-12 licensure.
Right.
So our director is here, just as, again, facilitating any questions or support of those types of policy decisions. So you'll hear it a lot, so that's not what it sounds to me. But yes, our office does have oversight of those things.
Yeah, I guess I would just note, regardless of which way the board goes, that bill had a pretty ample hearing a couple years ago when it went through, and that the local governments in particular had a lot of say over the final version of that bill and taking that 15 days out. I mean, I think the reason it was taken out was because typically, right, the fear that the teacher was being railroaded because it was such a quick turnaround, right? But I would say it was litigated, so to speak. So I would just be cautious about opening up to try to kind of, because that is almost legislating. So I would just be careful about opening that up when it did have a pretty ample hearing among local governments and others at the time. I mean, that bill, I feel like I voted on that bill 20 times that year. So, so-
Did the legislature, I did not follow this bill, consider setting, I think the concern addressed here, I understand the concern at the time was that was too fast. It was too fast for a teacher to be prepared for the grievance hearing, maybe to hire counsel and prepare the evidence and call witnesses. Was there any discussion about how long is too long? Or was that left to something like this advisory board to promulgate regulations?
it's been a minute, so I don't want to say one way or the other. I can go ask and find out and get information back to people because I'm going to see some of the folks that were more engaged in this than I was. But I don't want to say one way or the other because I'm not sure.
Why not put in there not to exceed?
Well, once again, if that's part of this action, it's because it would take 2 years to get done. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what would we like to do at this point? Steve?
Just a question. So a no vote on this really wouldn't change anything one way or the other.
Nope. We're just aligning.
Even though we don't agree with it. I don't agree with it.
Maybe not wholeheartedly. Yeah. I mean, I think we could see definitely some improvements in it, but my understanding is that this is what it is. And if we wanted to do some sort of additional piece, it would have to go through the entire regulatory process. So this is a fast track to make an alignment.
I wish we have the opportunity, to Dr. Johnson's point, that's a conversation that can be had, but the process can go up to 18 months or more.
Yeah, that's right.
So it will go through the following General Assembly, but that also gives Delegate Van Valkenburg time to research and bring back information if that's a conversation we should have for the future, but for the present. Madam Chair, I move that we accept what is presented as presented, so we shall be in compliance with the law.
Okay, Jennifer Jones made the Jessica Jones. I'm sorry. I have a friend named Jennifer Jones. So that's what Jessica Jones has made the motion. Do we have a second? Okay, thank you. And then what? Oh, Shelby Elliott for second. Okay. To accept what has been recommended. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Would we like to have a motion to convene a group to look at this more deeply? That was one of our options. Or do we want to wait on her? Yeah. Jennifer's pointing, or Jennifer, not Jennifer, Jessica's pointing. You're going to have to make the motion. Timeline, yeah.
Second, Jessica Jones.
Okay, so motion made by Andy Cox, second by Jessica Jones. Any other discussion? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we will now move on. What was that? Do we need everybody ayes and nays? Okay, so all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, so we are going on to our second item, which is the recommendation to approve new education endorsement programs at institutions of higher education. We welcome Janelle Torbert, the Director of Teacher Education, to share this with us.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Per our regulations for the review approval of education programs, regulations establish policies and standards for the preparation of instructional personnel, further ensuring educational quality educational quality for Virginia Public Schools students. Colleges and universities that offer programs for the preparation of professional school personnel must obtain education program approval from the Board of Education. Additionally, requests from the Virginia Institutions of Higher Education to add new education endorsement programs must be approved by the Board of Education. Requests must be made annually by March 31st of each year. These programs that I'm about to present were requested last year, and this is the last of the bunch of programs from last year, and we'll be starting a new cycle.
So just
soon.
time for March. That's what-
Yes.
Yeah.
The Advisory Board of Teacher Education reviews and makes recommendations to the Board of Education on approval of the Virginia education programs for school personnel. The final authority for program approval rests with the Board of Education. There are 4 programs I will present today for new endorsement requests. Averett University, Early Primary Education, Pre-K to 3, undergraduate. Hollins University, Elementary Education, Pre-K through 6, undergraduate. Mary Baldwin University, Early Elementary Grades, K through 6, undergraduate. And Rockbridge Consortium, Washington and Lee, and Southern Virginia University, Middle Education, Grades 6 through 8, undergraduate. Just for a little background information, the programs were reviewed by our content specialists at the Department of Education and by staff within the Office of Teacher Education, and are now being presented to you for your approval.
Okay, and as I look at these, we do have a member who will need to recuse themselves from this vote because Eric Moffett is within at Washington Lee and part of that Rockbridge County Consortium. So my understanding is we can take the top 3 and approve them all at one time, and then we will do the Rockbridge County Consortium approval second. So do we have a motion to approve the programs at Averett, Hollins, and Mary Baldwin?
Steve Whitten, so moved. Second.
All right, so Steve Whitten made the motion. It was seconded by Andrew Dare. And then we will need a motion to approve the Rockbridge Consortium. Oh, all of those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so motion carries. We will now need a motion to approve the education endorsement program at within the Rockbridge County Consortium, Washington and Lee, and Southern Virginia University. Do we have a motion to approve that? Andy Cox, so moved. Second, Andrew Dare. All those in favor? All those opposed? Anybody recusing themselves? Okay. And so with that, we have taken care of item number 2.
I will remind everyone, these were all undergrad.
Right.
And as a reminder, many of these institutions currently may have graduate level or may have other programs, but are seeking undergrad majors in education in these areas. So remember, the legislation allowed us to move in that direction, that have education programs based in the school of education. I'm just reminding many of us, because that is a big change in policy for our state. So I just want to emphasize that, especially when we see quite a few undergrad programs coming forward. So these institutions have had them typically, but may not have had them at base in the school of education.
So for those of you zooming in, Joan was reminding us that the undergraduate programs are new to the state of Virginia, and so all of the programs that were approved today are at the undergraduate level. Item number 3, presentation on teacher apprenticeship educator pipeline expansion strategy. And so we will welcome Joan Johnson to present this to us.
A moment to get the technology together. Okay. The mouse is a bit challenging. Maggie, I may need help. So, good morning. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'm going to stand next to the microphone. We are pleased to provide you with this presentation on one of many initiatives driven by our office as one strategy to address the teacher shortage. And as you know, we have a series that we're providing this organization with updates on strategies, policies that emphasize and impact the teacher shortage. And so you may have heard the buzz, but today you'll get some more details about that. And I'll be asking each one of you to then take the baton and share with your various constituents. And so want to make sure that you are on the front lines and aware of our progress regarding the teacher apprenticeship. And so please indulge me today as I present high level some of our progress in development as well as implementation. So high level today, I hope to present to you the what, the who, the why, the when, and the next steps for implementation in the Commonwealth. And we think that this presentation goes along and supports Delegate Van Valkenburg's highlight comments around looking at the infrastructure and building and expanding on new conceptual ways for preparation and to expand the pipeline. And we do believe that the apprenticeship model will do just that. Just as some background information for many of you, in Virginia, the United States Department of Labor and Industry, or DOLI, yes, no, pineapple, DOLI acronym, maintains approximately 15,000 apprenticeships serving in private, public sector, as well as in the military. So the concept is not new to Virginia, nor the nation. One of DOLI's missions is to improve opportunities for business and employees in the Commonwealth and to contribute to economic development and quality of life. Therefore, the concept discussion around workforce development. School divisions and youth have benefited from the existing policies and governance, as well as federal funding to support those initiatives. I know many of you that have been in CTE are very familiar with the various programs that are offered already in our state, and you'll hear more about that. We also acknowledge that there are specific Virginia codes, right, from the Department of Labor and Industry that really guide this process. And so it has been our joy and challenge in collaborating with them, and you'll see some of those outcomes. And one of the high points in terms of that structure is that they already have an existing commission, right, that implements, reviews, and monitors all apprenticeships across the Commonwealth in support of both national and state regulations. So why now? In November of 21, the US Department of Labor approved K-12 teaching as an apprenticeshipable occupation. So that was the go-ahead for us. As a result, programs that train and provide workforce development opportunities for K-12 teachers are now eligible to apply and become registered apprenticeship programs. And that's our buzzword. Registered is important. That's a distinction there. As part of the federal recognition process, the Virginia Department of Labor and Industry, DOLI, has been granted the responsibility for approving registered apprenticeships in the state of Virginia. Both the national and state agencies will coordinate with the Virginia Department of Education in serving, as we serve as the sponsor, and they will approve the apprenticeships sponsored by the Virginia Department of Education. We hope by leveraging federal recognition and funding, Virginia will support the community members, teacher candidates, and teacher candidates to become teachers in addressing our state need. Now, again, I'm asking for you all to help me communicate. This is a paradigm shift for us. We are really looking at the way we prepare teachers. We are infusing some best practices that we know work in teacher prep, as well as partnering in collaboration with our divisions in doing so. We believe that this solution will address recruitment, address financial barriers, and preparation challenges. We're asking for a shift in the way we think about preparation and working together with our divisions. And so you'll hear me talk about that paradigm shift often. One shift is that divisions will employ and pay for pre-service candidates, paying while they are working and preparing for them to be teachers versus the volunteer student teaching concept. Right? Paradigm shift. On the other flip side of that, the universities also are being asked to change their paradigm shift of how they conceptualize and prepare teachers, in that teachers would be working, candidates would be employed in non-teacher of record roles and responsibilities full-time while they are receiving the training and preparation to complete the degree or a degree, as well as meet the licensure requirements. So again, the emphasis there is on considering now, if my candidates are working full-time, what does the delivery, how does that impact the curriculum? The clinicals are the key components there that we're asking our universities to reconceptualize. Also, this particular initiative is highlighted in multiple places in the Governor's Executive Directive 3. So we're in alignment there. You'll also hear more and see in the Executive Directive reference to early childhood education apprenticeships. And so in the office, back at the office, we are collaborating with our CTE office on many adventures and many collaborative projects, and you'll hear more about early childhood. But my presentation today is specifically about teacher apprenticeships. So we use a pretty high level graphic, and it's not just a collaboration. We believe that this is a collaboration that will be a solution with the partners that we have. And you see the key stakeholders in this initiative are aspiring educators, the VDOE, apprenticeship, the employer, our divisions, as well as our educator preparations, our communities, and our schools. So all key stakeholders in this process. So based on our research, our state is proposing this collaborative model. You'll hear there are other models in other states. There are models that are presented that community colleges may facilitate in isolation. Divisions also could facilitate in isolation. But in our state, we want to incorporate all of what our state, we believe, are the best components for preparing our teachers and working together to address the shortage. Next, why teacher apprenticeships? This is our why question we always ask. We, again, believe that the partnership is critical and bringing in the vision and desires of all of those stakeholders in this planning, as well as the on-the-job training component, which we know has been documented to be an effective training component for our teachers. The recruit, prepare, and develop a diverse and highly skilled workforce, including by strengthening the pipeline into the profession. Establishing an affordable pathway into the profession with an earn and learn model that leads to nationally recognized credentials. Again, helping us with the reciprocity and helping individuals feel like what they're receiving in Virginia, right, will make them marketable in other states if they have this national credential as well. Also, we believe that it will provide a robust or more robust clinical experience for many of our teacher candidates with an experienced mentor, improve productivity, reduce turnover, and retain qualified talent, and create opportunities for teacher advancement and leadership within the model of mentoring or leading their division potentially in administration of this new initiative at the division level. Now, a few items. Again, what is the registered apprenticeship? And we're going to unpack this using some of the vocabulary from our Department of Labor. Specifically, if you want to think of it and use the vernacular of earn while you learn model to prepare workers for, let's see the last part, for implementation and becoming an educator. The sponsor in our model, the VDOE will lead as an interdisciplinary model where we will register, where we'll take on the responsibility of the administrative registration with the Department of Labor and Industry, as well as managing and monitoring that. Division collaborative partners with EPPs will register through us, and we will work with them as the sponsor. The employer or the division obviously has a very critical role, one, to hire the individual and to manage all of the expectations for exiting. The apprentice themselves also enters into a formal agreement with their employer and makes a commitment to finish, as well as in the future commitment with teaching with that particular division. Also, we believe it receives a combination of both classroom and on-the-job training simultaneously. Tuition, or at least partial tuition, funded by the state and federal workforce grants. And some of this will be based on individual status, right? But once we are a registered apprenticeship, the state government agency, that will enable us and individuals to receive new additional funding that they have never been able or been eligible for at the federal level. So that will provide additional federal funding if individuals are in the registered apprenticeship model. And again, the apprenticeship would be paid again as in a non-teacher of record role. So obviously they would receive the benefits and salaries from the employer. And again, that the focus on working typically during the day and attending school or weekends or online models. Next, high level in a graphic presentation, there are 5 key components of the apprenticeship. And again, we're going to ask, and all of us start to use this vernacular, in that the employer involvement is a key component. As we know in Virginia, we use the concept of divisions are the foundation for every registered apprenticeship model, because obviously the individual must be employed. Structured on-the-job training. Right? Apprentices receive job embedded training from an experienced mentor, as well as anything related to the division preparation, acclimation to the division, as well as other training specific to that one division. 3, related instruction. And so that's for us, the additional technical skills required to meet licensure requirements, as well as to be a teacher, the pedagogy potentially, or completion of the degree there. And then compensation for the skill gains. And that's a progressive model that is required. So as the individual meets certain benchmarks, as assessed by the mentor, the wage or payment also progresses with the more advanced skills. And finally, that national occupational credential that would be coming for them from completing the apprenticeship model. Next, characteristics of the VDOE's program. High level, let me take my time. So again, we're hoping that the model leads to practices in teacher prep, as well as the rigors of a national registered apprentice program. The model will be federally recognized, nationally approved, and state monitored. So just high level, a few things. If you would envision, the target population is paraprofessionals potentially, instructional aides, current substitutes, individuals that could be staff currently in the school that do not have the credentials, either with a degree or meeting the licensure requirements. So that focus is almost a grow your own type of a model, recruiting from within. And then also individuals that could be currently enrolled in a teacher prep program or EPP, or seeking to complete the degree through a traditional model. For this program, in order for us to manage it in the time and the level of intensity, we're going to structure it around a 2-year model, but it could be longer if individuals do not have the related technical or credit, right, to complete the degree. So we're going to really target individuals that have at least 60 or an associate's degree, right, or more credits, or potentially already have a bachelor's, but do not have the degree or licensure credentials. Employment, obviously paid to work in the school system as an instructional aide, etc., under a mentor for a 2-year period. Again, non-teacher of record roles. The employment commitment to the division after that, we're suggesting 2 years, but that will be a decision as part of the articulation of the agreement between the individual and the division. And so those are some things we want to continue to research and talk with our divisions about so that we have some consensus. But typically off the top of my head, we're suggesting about a 2-year commitment as a follow-up. And then obviously there must be mentor training and mentor incentive to support mentors. And in our state, as you know, typically now the mentors are assigned or required for teachers of record. But we have not had a structure in place to support individuals that are not teachers of record. And so for me, this also is a paradigm shift for the Commonwealth. And so we will need to take on doing more prep and preparation and training for the mentors, as well as looking at incentives that are innovative. And so some of our divisions are coming forth already with models where they may have 2 current teachers that are assigned to 1 apprentice or 1 now a residency candidate, so that those 2 individuals can take turns supporting or may take turns covering each other's class while they work with this individual that's in the teacher prep. So for example, that's one example of what I call an innovative strategy for using 2 mentors for 1 candidate. Yes.
Do you want us to hold questions until the end?
Yes, please. And as you know, because we may not ever get through. So thank you. And then obviously we have candidates earn a living wage with no debt and begin teaching with 2 years prior experience. Now, from the Department of Labor's perspective, and so as I'm learning and growing in this, the model has specific codes that drive what is acceptable to them, because again, they've been doing this for years. So some of what you will see in our Virginia model is really a non-negotiable, right? And there are minimum requirements per year that we are addressing in our proposal. So again, this is maybe the first time for many of us hearing some of these details. So just really an introduction. So again, and this will be shared with you after today's meeting as well. So again, it really outlines the responsibility for the sponsor, employer, apprentice, right? At minimum, approximately per year, about 200 on-the-job hours. So again, our proposed model will be for 2 years. And so we'll see 4,000 on what Virginia is proposing of on-the-job training hours. And so we're not going to go into a lot of detail today of what that really means, but that could be anything from covering classes, substituting hours, or it could be attending meetings, or it could be going to the board meeting, or they could be going to professional development. All that would be included in hours for on-the-job training. Also, they require 144 hours of related technical instruction, and that could be the degree requirements, or it could be also addressed in the statutory, meeting the statutory requirements. For example, when they have to take the CPR class or dyslexia, or go again to the professional development. There is a distinction between the technical instruction versus on-the-job training hours. And then making a starting wage and a wage upon completion with the increase there. Then again, and I will be glad to discuss this more, but want to give you an introduction and get some feedback from this group as we begin in looking at the timeline of implementation in our state. So I'm just pulling out a piece. And so we have conceptualized this at the undergrad level, at the master's level, and then thirdly, looking at what it would look like potentially for individuals that have those degrees and just need the licensure piece. But again, the program ideal pilot is for individuals that are pursuing the degree, whether it be an undergrad or at the master's level. And so I'm sorry, I think that's cut off, but high level, again, those 5 components you'll see in this draft. And this again is Virginia's proposal. Those 5 components highlighted here. And again, not going into a lot of detail, we don't have the time for that, but just again, there's going to be the estimated 2-year experience where individuals would address the 4,000 hours of on-the-job training. And you see some examples there. And then there will be professional standards that align with the state's performance standards for teachers that will be high-level outcomes of this process. Third, mentor engagement and deliverables for the mentors assigned to these new apprentices, as well as the related technical education. And so again, the minimums there are outlined. But again, we'll spend more time unpacking that as we continue to look at this. And then you'll see high level, again, just so everything is written, you'll see the competencies required for licensure are addressed in the courses in the degree. So depending on the particular endorsement, the individual will be held to the standard of the regulations and completing the approved program, right, from the various institutions. So if in fact an individual is already in the pipeline, I would suggest my vision is that an individual typically in their junior year would begin this program at the same time they're doing some of their upper level clinicals, and that this program would meet the requirements in the degree program simultaneously as they meet the requirements for the apprenticeship program and model, right? Or it could be the teacher's aide, right? Thinking of the grow your own, where that individual is working, but yet and still taking courses that have clinical components that could be satisfied with their on-the-job training. And so whatever the competencies are that are currently existing for that particular endorsement, they remain, and they are built into this model, and which makes the state's sponsorship really relevant, because if individuals complete this program and complete the approved program, they will leave this program meeting all of the licensure requirements. Now, the universities that I'm going to highlight have been advised that if they currently want to expand into having some new programs, that they have an annual opportunity to update that through Janelle's office, or if they want to make modifications potentially in courses or how things are delivered online, or modifying courses or creating new courses, they too have to go through notifying Janelle's office with those changes as well. And in addition to that, you know, they're going to be doing any assessments that are board required assessments through that program, as well as any new statutory requirements that roll out during the time they're in the program. So as we know, there's quite a bit of emphasis now on the VLA literacy. There could be math literacy also being proposed. So whatever, dyslexia, special ed, all the same statutory requirements are built into the program. And again, we're looking at this from the degree standpoint of undergrad, masters, or those that already have those credentials and just need the licensure components. And so this, again, sorry, may be a little bit easier to review, and this I'll share with you. But again, these are just drafts. I'm looking for feedback from this group, right? And we have now probably gone into, I'll highlight how's my time. I'm looking at time. So just a little bit of time around those expectations. And much of this comes from the Department of Labor's requirements. And so we see here the employer or division's expectations. Again, provide the on-job training, employ the apprentice, pay the apprentice wage, provide the mentor that the apprentice will learn from, input from curriculum, working with the universities about what we need, what they need in alignment with the endorsement preparation, and provide evaluation and feedback, of course, on the apprentice, the program, curriculum, and future contract. And in our role as the intermediary, excuse me, we're developing minimum qualifications, helping to establish the wage scale, which will be minimum at the state's minimum wage or above, work processes, and obviously aligning with our regulations for competencies for those endorsements. Program sponsors responsible for facilitating coordination administration with the Department of Labor, responsible for training, completion of each apprentice, evaluation of the system, monitors, and apprentice, and the record keeping that is required from the Department of Labor, tracking any concerns, dismissals, right? Because of that contract, all of those components are required of the division. If the individual is no longer employed, they will be required to update us. And again, subject to the Department of Labor's review. They will review our program annually. Then from the mentor's perspective, serve as the subject matter expert. Apprentices gleaning the knowledge from the industry expert, sharing life and skills, and pay it forward kind of thinking. It's responsible for the day-to-day on the job training of the apprentice, can pass on bad, just responsible for providing feedback regarding the apprenticeship programs and helping the apprentice know which work processes they are experiencing. Apprentice, high level, meet the minimum qualifications for entry, must have the aptitude to learn on the job, meet the expectations and requirements set forward, provide on-the-job training, progress, work ethic, employability, classroom attendance, grades in those technical courses, be respectful of mentors, time, effort, and energy, accomplish program competencies, licensure criteria for exit, and then future employment commitment for the sponsoring division. Now, in terms of timeline, so we kind of broke this into phases. Phase one has really been part of this planning process, which you see, and many of you know we've been doing for the last year, looking at other states, working in collaboration with other agencies. And so what I describe is this planning phase. We'll continue, but really just to give you an update of our progress looking at this. In that one, we have initiated and solicited and awarded 9 planning grants to division partners. And they have been working since October of 22. And we have built a network for those that received the planning grants and are meeting quarterly to provide technical assistance, to bring in resources that we can consistently grow and learn from. And that network will be maintained. And then we hope that we are maximizing resources. And we, unfortunately, we were hoping we would have an apprentice coordinator. So from the grant funding, we were also hoping that we would have someone other than Joan to do this. But that search was unsuccessful. So we will be, and putting a plug in now, we will, yeah, I know, Andy, I know. So we will be completing another search for an apprentice coordinator position. And so I'm putting a plug in for you now. As you can imagine, we do feel like this will be a whole office in itself, right? If this is successfully implemented. So I really need some quality folks to help us around the table here. So just because I knew that you were going to ask, so who were the pilots that received the initial planning grants? And you see those on the screen. Unfortunately, we do not have Region 5 and 8. And for several reasons that occurred, but we've tried to engage those particular divisions in the selection planning, the selection of the grants. So they were involved. I use HR folks to help us review applications for the proposal. So you can see those here. And so some of the institutions have also offered to provide online programs so that Region 8 could have access to some of these resources. So again, at least we've got some folks that have made the commitment that want to start the journey with us. And so we are, because you can imagine the technical demands on us in transferring and this passion and the details of the program, we're starting small and we want to really try to start and focus on the quality of the program and building, because we'll learn from this first year, as you all know. Next, phase 2, just to give you some idea, we're really hoping that we can complete the registration process in January of 23. And that means that we'll be submitting pretty high level plans to the Department of Labor and Industry and kicking off, you'll see probably some public announcements, as you can imagine, from the governor's office, from our leadership as well. But so that is our desire for this month to wrap that up. We will continue with those network meetings and supporting those partnerships and hoping that the programs following our launch, they will be launching their programs when they are ready, right, through February through May of 23. And so we have some resources that the state has access to that's ESSER related. So that runs out in 24. But until then, my vision is to have at least 2 cycles of state funding to support incentivizing divisions and individuals to pursue this new pathway. And then there's also some available federal funding, if in fact we can get this off the ground, that will be available during 23. But there will be other funding, but right now we know for sure that there is Department of Labor funding for state apprentice individuals if they're eligible to receive funding. And it's, I think it's a one-time funding for about $3,000 or $4,000. But again, just to give you some understanding of the vision for sustainability, right, that will be available for the program. And so we are hoping to launch mentor training. That's my next, as you can imagine, that's the next area that we need to really dig in, hopefully in February and March, to really look at what the expectations are for the mentors, what training is needed, and how can we support this? Again, a first for the Commonwealth. And I did. So, and I think Andrew stepped out. And again, I know this was a lot of information and we will follow up with this PowerPoint for sure. But I wanted to give you all an opportunity to hear at least a little bit of the introduction of it, as well as our progress. And no, we're not finished yet, as you can imagine. And the program will continue to evolve, but at least we feel like we've got something that we can launch and that we can stand behind with all of your support, of course.
Okay, questions for Joan. Joan, your enthusiasm about this, I know you've worked really hard on this and we can feel it, but questions, concerns?
And John, if you could take some notes for me, please. Thank you.
Jessica Jones.
So thank you. Very in-depth.
You're rocking it.
You are awesome. And you proved that in that presentation as well. Just a few details, and I'll start with the money first, because divisions always go, how am I going to pay for it? So the opportunity to get grants will be made available through the Department of Labor.
We have two funding sources right now that I can speak of. One will be our own state funding that's going to be tagged for apprenticeships, but it's based on federal ESSER money that we're still kind of riding the coattail of from COVID. But I've got about 2 years of funding, about $2 million that we are going to solicit requests for proposals. And so in my mind, because of the timeline of the money, I'm going to try to do two. One will be early, like February, for proposals, and then one in May. And priority will be given, obviously, to those pilot partnerships, but it will be open to any division and university that want to submit the proposal. And so again, that's the piece that we're still unpacking, but I know you want to know. So there will be some designation that the money must be used for tuition reimbursement, for the mentorship training and their employment. And then some divisions may need to use the money to offset the cost of hiring, right? So again, we'll try to figure out how to do that best, but off the top of my head, the grant will require the proposal around those 3 areas.
Okay, and then the follow-up to that, because you were talking about the wage scale, I guess being almost like a ladder piece, would that be consistent from division to division? Or would that be kind of
so
like
that's also on my list of things that we need to unpack. But in the vision, when I've looked at other states, they use a percentage, right? So the percentage of the teacher's wage, and that could be consistent across the state and yet allow divisions to manage that if we use a certain percentage. And obviously the state will not control that. That will be a division decision, but this pilot group is going to help us unpack that, right? So for example, Shelby, I think, I'm trying to see if we have any divisions here. The divisions are working with their partners now to consider various models because it could be different, but that's the one I think seems to be the most consistent. If we go with a percentage of the teacher's salary. Shelley, you want to highlight that piece? Your example from Prince William, at least, what you're thinking?
Correct. Well, we are. Thank you. We're partnering with VCU's RTR, Teacher Residency Program, which I had collaborated with when I was with Henrico County Schools. And this is the first year that we have been able to bring RTR up to Northern Virginia. And it has been incredibly successful. That residency model has been in place now, I think 13 years, and is one of the most successful in the country, but it's an unpaid residency. They have, the individuals get their tuition and fees and the mentoring and the testing support all at no cost, but it's very hard for individuals to take a year off of work without benefits to do the residency.
And that's a third option. The residency grant is a
right. That's a separate
but that is
option.
there. That's a third funding source. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So what we are hoping to do is turn these into paid positions with the, as Joan said, to earn while they learn and be able to in the future offer pay a salary with benefits to the ones that are in the residency model, the traditional one that we have now for individuals who are coming into the program with already holding a bachelor's or master's and just need the now want to earn a master's in education or just the graduate certificate to complete licensure requirements. But we want to open this up as well, grow a multi-tiered, multi-layered program where we can recruit individuals who never had a chance to complete their bachelor's. Maybe they only have an associate's or just a little bit of college coursework, and recruit those coming right out of our Teacher for Tomorrow high schools with no college. And in this, we're looking at having potentially 1 year, 2 year, 3 year models where the individuals serve as an apprentice, eventually evolve to the resident and finish their degree and get their license. And then of course, there is a follow-up commitment to the division to remain with us. Right now it's 3 years as a teacher. So this is a game-changing program. It not only recruits and diversifies our teacher candidates, but then it helps with retention. And we have seen such a success with the RTR traditional program. We just have very high hopes for this.
How did you determine your salary? I think she's interested in the salary piece.
That is a piece we're still working on. The resident that we have in place this year is still in just the traditional unpaid residency program. She is getting all of her tuition and master's degree at no cost. But we are working now to determine what the salary benefits would look like for residents for next year. And then of course, there'll be different salary potentially options for those coming in at the apprentice level who may just be starting out with the degree. But I do think, and I could be wrong, but I think divisions will differ probably in those, what the baseline salary is for the apprentice and residents, with the percentage being state monitored as they increase. The resident that we have now, the residency option, where they complete it in 1 year, and at the end of the school year, they're ready for hire as the teacher of record and for their license. That would be at one level, but the apprentices who may have to do a 2 to 3 year program, I think it's going to be a different salary. And of course, with the increment increases as their teaching responsibilities, co-teaching responsibilities grow in the classroom.
So you hear the logic, but that's something that we're going to have to continue. And so that's why we call it a pilot, right? Because we'll see what bubbles out. But I have heard the percentage model that seems to be acceptable so far.
Last question. Thank you. You have listed master teacher, quantifications around that. Is it somebody that has 5 years experience?
We haven't got to that yet.
Okay, that's the only other thing I had left.
Because as we know, the state has guidelines for mentors in general. So we probably will pull from that and not try to create anything that's new. But again, this individual is going to be different than a first year full-time teacher, right? So the needs will be a little different, but we haven't gotten there yet. I think, Andrew, you had some questions.
I stepped out, but I can't see her name.
Oh, Janine. Okay. As a teacher in full-time classroom, this is a really neat idea. And as a person who works in a building that is desperate for teachers, this is a great step forward. My only concern is, as a teacher who's been teaching for 17 years, and if I'm asked to be a mentor, my division, I have done it. I don't get paid for it. It is a lot of work on my part. And my concern is, with these, qualified teachers who are going to be mentors, I do see there is going to be some incentive, but I feel like, we have a lot to do already, and we want these qualified teachers to be mentors, but there needs to be something extra. Is there something in the pipeline
Give
for
us
that?
something. You tell us what, baby. You tell me what.
Pay,
Tell me what to do.
pay.
You tell me what we need
Pay.
to give, right?
Yeah, vacation. Yeah, there you go. Vacation home at the beach.
But we know that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, just, I mean, time, extra time. I like the idea of the two mentors working together. That's a good idea. But just having some, I mean, other, you know, you can give me credit hours. I've got 5 million of them. I don't need it anymore. So, but as a person who,
Points, we do points sometimes.
Right.
Is that valuable? Do you want points?
sure. And there are people who want that incentive, and I'm
Professional development points.
thankful for that opportunity. But I'm saying, coming as a teacher, full-time teacher, I think, you know, having that extra pay or some other really important incentive would be helpful down the pipeline.
Thank you. And we're gonna need to ask for your help in trying to figure that out. So the pilot also, those individuals that are gonna be piloting this for the first year, we're asking them those kinds of questions because we can't make those decisions without the feedback.
That was actually one of the things I was going to bring up. We've learned a lot through our residency program over the past 13 years, and the training for the mentor teachers. We've learned that that's critically important, the selection for them and the training for them, but also the compensation piece. And so I think we have models there, but that was one of the questions. I'm just really excited about this. I mean, this is something that I think could be that game-changing thing that a few folks have said we need. And I think this is really good even at the undergraduate level. Even though I would love the tuition dollars of all students, I think this is a great opportunity to partner with community colleges to make things more affordable. But as I think about this, like, I know we're moving forward with RTR as part of the pilot, and that's kind of a well-oiled machine. But I really think the game changing happens when we can really bring this at the undergraduate level. But then that requires Chev. I know when we, a few years back, when we were looking at the BSED programs, we got, and I don't know the right word, but folks here will know what I'm talking about. We got concessions or something from Chev that it was able to get done in a year instead of a normal process that would be a multi-year process. I don't know if there's a question or a comment. The question is, have we thought about that? The comment is, it would be great if we can have Chev as a partner with this to really move it along, whatever needs to happen at the undergraduate level, because it is going to require, I believe it's going to require going to Chev if we're looking at this at the undergraduate level.
It depends if your institution already has a program, because if your institution already has, your EPP already has that program, no. It's really about looking at delivery of your current program, if you already have one, and the potential of how you maximize the clinicals. Right. And so this is my area that I'll be working with them on. But thinking through, if you've got a 3 or 4 year model for your program, and if someone is at a junior level in your undergrad, what would the clinicals look like? And can they accomplish that if we as the institution revise and consider how we can use co-teaching for a year to address some of those things? How can we look at using the hours they're doing working full-time to meet some degree requirements, potentially around clinicals or other gateways in your EPP program? So if you have the existing programs, it's really about looking at how to align it with some of the clinical, to be honest with you, the clinicals. And for example, if your programs are all offered during the day, Monday through Friday, that's not going to be a match with the program. That's the reality. And I'm saying that for a reason, right? So that's the kind of out of the box paradigm shift thinking that will be required. Now, if you don't have the undergrad program, for example, if you are working with a division, I don't know, Andy, for example, in Southwest Virginia, and a division wants a program, I don't know, everybody has elementary. Let's just say math, for the sake of saying math. And if you don't already have that at the undergrad level, yes, you would need to pursue that if you don't have a degree at all at the Chev level. But if it's just, you already have the degree and you need a math educator program, that's through our office, which does take a year though, because it's only available as an opportunity to submit a new program in March. And that's because of the multiple levels of approval that has to go through. But again, if in fact it comes in, if you already know you want to do that, we can certainly look at that process and try to streamline as much as possible. But as you know, it goes through multiple reviews at this level and then the board. So that's why it at least takes about 6 to 8 months review.
Just want to change your delivery model.
Right, that's an email.
That class,
That could be an email.
but not with Chev.
Correct.
To change it, that's enough.
That's a VDOE. That could be a VDOE thing.
Okay.
Now, but if you want to change your degree online, that's meaning you have to communicate with Chef because they're going to ask you to align it with your face-to-face program. So if you're changing delivery or you're changing credit hours, those are some degree types of things that you would work with Chef on.
Right.
So one final kind of a clarification on what you said, because this was one of the questions I typed. So the 4,000 on the job hours for them to count towards clinical internship hours, you're saying that's an internal to the university
That's correct.
to work it out. Okay.
That's correct. The school division would be clocking those hours as they come to work every morning, as they're working at the bus stop, as they go to the board meeting, because maybe they need more hours because we know we kind of did an estimate. I think it's a 500 hour years estimate for a contract. So typically that means that individual would count other hours, working at the bus stop, as I said, going to meetings, participating in the cheerleading sponsor, right? Those are all hours that would address that 4,000, but the university would need to consider. So how can we maximize the clinicals that we used to require them to go and observe, or clinicals where they're working in different grade levels, right? To meet some of the licensure requirements. How do we maximize that if they're already in the building? Thank you for those questions. Yes.
Joan, I just want to say that, in the time that I've been here, I've heard lots of ideas about how we increase the pipeline for teachers, and hands down, this is probably, bar none, probably the best presentation and most creative idea that I've ever seen. So I certainly thank you for that. Just a point that I would like to make, because I know you're taking notes about how to move forward with this program. I did note that many of the school divisions, at least that I saw, or the partners that I saw, many of them are mid-sized to large school districts. And most of them, of course, are in close proximity to a large university. So I don't want to, I'd like to just put on the radar, those rural school divisions who also struggle and are not near some of these large universities. I do think that somehow we have to get creative in getting them involved. They don't have the large offices to write the grants.
Correct. That's what I've learned.
Many times they don't know that the grants are available because they just don't have the staff to monitor all those wonderful superintendent memos that come out. And also, I would also add that we need to involve the community colleges in some way, shape, or form, because many of those rural school districts are in close proximity to a community college. And so that's just 2 suggestions that I have. Thank you.
That's good. Thank you. And we have our Chev representative with us also today. So he's hearing this as well. So we'll engage him on some additional comments. But no, I think that's a really good idea for the community colleges, because typically they are based in some of those smaller counties, divisions. Yes.
And I just want to say, Travis, that's something. I don't know if this is on, but
you see the green.
That's probably all I can see, and I don't see it. I'm gonna have to break down and just, realize it's not the most sexiest look with readers. But I think I'm in good company. Travis, I just wanted to say that's something that we're really aggressively looking at VCU. And I know there's some other universities, as how can we meet the needs of the smaller, more rural, and we're exploring online. I know we recently got approval for online for our career switcher program. So folks are paying attention to that, but I would just, keep screaming it to whoever, for the universities, for us to really not forget about the smaller and more rural divisions.
Yeah, we're with you. And so obviously that's a concern for me as well. And we look at our data about the vacancies, right? And so we're using that data to inform. And so that was one of the reasons why the state took on the responsibility to register versus having divisions do it, because at least if the state took on the administrative responsibility, that's one less thing some of the smaller divisions are dealing with.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I do think this is really exciting. It'll be interesting to see how it progresses. One question I have is because this was a presentation, do we still need to have a motion to approve
Sure. if you
Or
like.
accept
Just
the
accept
presentation?
the
All right,
presentation.
so do we have a motion to accept the presentation on the apprenticeship pipeline?
Jessica Jones, so moved.
Jessica Jones moved. Second is, I know it, last name's Elliott. What was the first? Shelby Elliott. All those in favor vote aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. We will now move on to our liaison reports. Do we have a report from the Virginia Community College System?
Yeah, it's Dan Lewis. I don't have one. There will be one next.
Okay, and Dan's going to let us know that he will report to us at our next meeting. What about Chev? No report. Joan Johnson, anything else or?
There you go. So Maggie's gonna try to get the screen back up again. So many things. Again, I want to thank Dr. Andrew Dare for his commitment. Yeah, go ahead. I want to thank him for his commitment and update you all. As you know, with the policy, we have solicited applications, and now the recommendations for the 2 vacant positions will be voted on by the board this February at the next board meeting. I think the February 2nd. Is that the next board meeting date? Yes, so the 2 new members will be coming on board after that. And so again, that also for us is a reminder that again, their constituents and their applications, and they were selected based on the particular areas that they represent. And so if at any time your jobs change or your roles change, please, we would have to consider whether you would still be eligible to serve in that capacity. And so as you also know, we're very concerned about quorum. And so hopefully with the weather warming up a little bit and coming out of some of the holidays, we'll ensure that we have enough members to continue a meeting and using the hotel facility. So again, I want to thank you all. And that leads me into another bit of business. Just as a reminder, we have 2 remaining, Maggie thinks it's 3, but we have 2 remaining meetings of February the 6th and April the 6th. And we actually are thinking a little bit about a recommendation for, March the 6th, for a recommendation for considering a 3rd meeting of April the 3rd. Because as you heard, we anticipate that there may be some General Assembly outcomes that may require ABTEL to make some recommendations to the board, knowing that that will be our last meeting until September. And so the board will continue to meet, but this body will not meet. So we may need to convene in April. And so we wanted to actually ask if that was possible for the majority of those that are here today. If we went ahead and made a decision for April the 3rd, anticipating that there could be some legislation that we will need to review and act on. And so again, I'll just pause now. And if there are any questions about that, again, it's a Monday. We are just adding an additional meeting that we kept there as an alternate.
And can I add to, that's all dependent on whether or not. The reason I think there's 3 left is, I'm sorry, is because that's all dependent on session. As we know, that could change at any time. We may not have a budget. We may not have everything settled. There's all kinds of things that could go on. But if there is something that needs to be done, it's better for us to go ahead and meet and make that recommendation, because we don't meet at the same times that the board does. That would give the board the opportunity to jumpstart in the fall what we were trying to get done.
Thanks.
John, I would just point out that maybe never did not look at the calendar, there's lots of people in here. Many of us have our spring breaks the last week of March and the first week of April. So look at their calendar. Good, April 3rd.
It's the following week.
So the 2nd week.
Following week.
So if you could just take a pause, and you can look at your spring breaks and your calendars. You do a quick vote by hand, it's visible. If you in fact are available for April the 3rd, please raise your hands. again, if you don't need to meet. Then the other bit of business. Is to look at dates for 2024. And as you know, code drives us to have at least 5 or additional if board or we determine that we need more. So if you go hit next slide. And these are the proposed dates for 2024. Also added in one Thursday as an option. Previously, we've attempted to invite the state superintendent, and she has a conflict with the governor's advisory or commitment on Mondays at this time. Just throw it in a Thursday as a possible option so that we can engage the state superintendent to come to the ABTEL. So again, I'm just throwing a Thursday in just to try. So again, you see the dates here are September the 18th, November the 6th, that Thursday, February the 8th, March the 4th. I think I tried to look for Easter around Easter also, but that April one, I think it's in March. Before Easter is end of March. So let's just take a moment, consider these dates. We also looked at the board dates, and typically these are either a week or so. Yes, Andrew.
Election Day, 7th. And so I know a lot of folks have, Election Day is the 7th, and a lot of folks will have that day off and may do an extended vacation. I don't know if we want to look at either the week before for, let's see, October the 30th. Instead of November the 6th, but anyhow, you may have an idea with that. Yeah.
It's up to you. The only thing is, to be honest, with you actually to our meeting last time because they were all.
I do want to add that Thursday, February 8th, is the middle session and it's a long session. So the state superintendent may not be available on that Thursday.
Another Thursday.
So like maybe the October meeting,
the Thursday. So testing on Thursday at the end of October, not Halloween. Thursday at the end of October as the substitute for November 6th. So that means we wouldn't have a meeting in November, but we would have one in October. Board action has to.
But
I would suggest doing Thursday the 9th.
November.
So the recommendation is November the 9th to replace. So there's nothing in October. Correct. Oh, we'll bring.
And then February
The 5th.
So could you say those out loud so we get those in the meeting? Maybe you have those, when we say it out loud, where's the microphone?
So these dates would be changed. So it was September 18th, November 9th, which is a Thursday, February 5th, 2024, March 4th, and April 1st.
Thank you. All right, so you've got the save the dates. Now you can enter and share with your friends and family that you'll be here in Richmond with me. If the creek doesn't rise, as they say. All right, great. Next slide, please. So just as a recap, the items from, I guess it was our November meeting, just giving you the update. They were all reviewed as final on the consent agenda. Then the board approved all of your recommendations around the praxis science areas, as well as the teacher ed programs in the biannual reports as well. So all those were approved. Next slide. And then a bit, as we know, Maggie's going to share with us, I've asked her just a little bit of, I guess we've been watching the bills and kind of looking at hot topics and legislation, just to give you a quick overview in addition to what the delegate shared with us today. Maggie, you want to come up and share a little bit?
I had started a whole presentation, then I realized it's just too soon because, as Delegate von Valkenburg mentioned earlier, we don't actually start until Wednesday. So just a few notes that I wanted to share. We do convene on January the 11th, which is this Wednesday at noon, and we will adjourn sine die on February the 25th. So this is an odd numbered year. So this is a shorter session. And they'll be doing budget amendments. The governor dropped his proposed budget amendments in December. So if you haven't seen those, there is a SOOPS memo, I think December 20th-ish, that relates to all the education budget amendments. So if you wanted to get an update on that, you can see that. Democrats currently hold a majority in the Senate. Republicans currently hold a majority in the House. There are 3 vacant seats. One is in the Senate, the other 2 are in the House, and the special elections for those are actually tomorrow. They're trying to fill those seats quickly, obviously, so that they can get those seats filled for a session on the 11th. There is a limit to the amount of legislation that our General Assembly members can introduce. After Wednesday, the delegates only have 5 additional ones, in addition to the ones that they pre-filed, and then they only have 6 for the Senate, total of 15 for the House. So even though the bill numbers are a little bit, they've got these little barriers on them, last year, the department had over 250 bills assigned to it. Right now, we only have about 25 as of Friday afternoon, but then Saturday and Sunday, I saw more drop that are related to the Department of Education. So we still have a lot to do. The pre-file deadline is 10 a.m. on Wednesday. And then, like I said, they'll be able to drop a few extras after that. Most of the bills that we're seeing this year relate to parental rights in schools. We're seeing some things about SOAs and the standards of accreditation and positions. Not seeing a whole lot of money attached to some of these, but that could change in the next couple of days. Like I said, we've got some time on some additional bills that will drop. I know that there's been some talk about there might be some licensure requirement massaging there. We haven't seen anything yet in writing. So just so you know, we haven't seen anything, hasn't been assigned to us. I didn't see anything over the weekend. Again, we've got some time, it could happen. But I did see a little bit of increase in money for our National Board Certified Teachers. That was a Carrie Coiner bill. And right now, that was the only one related to licensure grants that I saw an increase on. There might be some dual enrollment massaging in some career and technical teachers. Well, the residency ones, yeah. So if there's something in particular you think would help remove some barriers to licensure, I know for me, I was really hoping to see something that related to the provisional licenses of teachers. Right now, there's a requirement that they have to have 3 years of satisfactory performance evaluations in order to have that extended. But if somebody in those 3 years may not have continued teaching for whatever reason, they may not have those evaluations. I did not see that in the governor's package, and I have not seen that drop anywhere as well. So that might be something that, if anybody knows anybody, that might be something that we might be able to put a bug in somebody's ear about. But that would at least help about 40,000 inactive provisional teachers that could possibly, not all of them are going to sign up again, but maybe they could sign up again and get that provisional license extended. But that's all I have for now. Next time we'll have a whole presentation about where bills are in committees and where everybody stands and that type of thing. But we still have a little bit of time here this week to get some more information in, but happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions for Megan?
In the fall, we had some information about special licensing for military. Is that Is that still in the works?
Again, I haven't seen anything in writing as it relates to our military personnel that has become official. We've heard lots of states that have adopted policies where the bachelor's degree is not required, but under code in Virginia, they do have to have a bachelor's degree. So if something does come in writing, it would be from the legislature, it would be a code change, and it would, be extensive, but we have not seen anything official in writing yet. But that's a great question.
Any other questions? Anyone? Thank you, Maggie. You need to find better things to do on your weekend than track legislation, but that's just my personal opinion. All right. So, Joan, anything else? She's thinking.
Yes, we need to think through. Again, as we convene in the next couple of meetings, we want to be very intentional about our topics and discussions. As we know, we have a limited capacity, all of us, right? And limited time. So just as a reminder, again, we only have 2 more ABTEL meetings. So if there's some initiatives or topics that you want to bring up, this will be your time. And so as we conclude today, as you know, we break up into our subcommittee groups. And so today, intentionally, we want both of those groups to take a look at the assessment discussion and potential moving forwards with some of the recommendations we started with early in 22. And so Maggie and I have some proposals that we'd like to share with the group. And then asking you all to define your agenda for the upcoming year. What kinds of things would you like for ABTEL? Some of the things we discussed today to be priorities for us. And I will ask that you consider priorities. That's my buzzword. Some people talk about, so what is your buzzword for the new year? Mine is prioritizing because of the limited capacity that we all have. And if without that intentionality, right, we're all over the place. So if we have some ideas, please share those with your chairs. Dr. Martha for licensure and Peggy here for Dr. Peggy, sorry, for our teacher prep programs. And again, thank you for your service and your commitment. And again, farewell, Andrew.
Yes, farewell, Andrew.
Farewell, Andrew, but I'm sure we'll continue our collaboration over the miles. And again, Happy New Year. And I think that's all you see on the screen. We're going to be adjourning. We'll take a little break. Lunch will be available at 11:30. Food will be out in the courtyard area. And then for committee meetings, we're asking you to bring your food back into this room. But again, we want to start at about 11:15-ish. So take a little break and then we'll reconvene for our committee members.
Okay, but we do need to have a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting. So if I could ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved, Eric.
So moved, Eric Maffa. Second, Peggy and Schindler. And with that, we will adjourn this meeting of ABTEL.